Hello everyone and welcome to another Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. Before we kick off, I apologise. We missed Wednesday's video release. It was recorded. Unfortunately, a few technical gremlins meant that the video quality wasn't the best, so we decided not to release it and lump everything together today, which means we've got a bumper edition of Premier League press conferences and also a roundup of what's been happening in the world of the Carabao Cup. Before we kick off, there's still one fixture to go. That's Manchester United, who host Aston Villa at Old Trafford. A little bit of team news from Erik ten Hag. He will run late checks on Jadon Sancho. That's been illness. That's kept him out of the last two. Also, Anthony, that's a hip problem. Watch that one closely because tonight's game may give us a good indication of potential setup and team selection for this weekend. For Aston Villa, again, new manager at the helm, Unai Emery. Tonight's lineup and starting 11 may give us a good insight into how he'll go this weekend, although I wouldn't expect too many changes after last weekend's result. That was a great result for Villa, and providing everybody comes through that game unscathed, I could see the Villains being unchanged. Anyway, on to today's press conference. We're still waiting on one, and that's from Thomas Frank. But what we do know from the Brentford camp, Christian Norgard returned from a long-term Achilles problem in the Carabao Cup. He managed 45 minutes. That was always on the cards, according to the manager, so that was a planned substitution. There was no reaction. There was no setback with regards to that. We're going to be hopefully have an update on Vitaly Janelt. That was an injury that he picked up last weekend. Apparently, he failed a late test before the Carabao Cup, so that's an indication that he is very close. If he does fail, then it could be a start for Norgard. Like I say, it's been over 2 months, so it would be a little bit risky with regards to that. If you've missed the news with regards to the England squad selection, the 26-man squad, then Ivan Toney is not one of those that has been selected by Gareth Southgate to go to Qatar. Elsewhere today, we also had a big update from Brendan Rodgers. Now, unfortunately, James Justin, who was stretchered off against Newport County, that injury is a lot more serious than we first thought. That's an ruptured Achilles, the second that the club has suffered this season on the back of Ricardo Pereira's. It's probably going to keep him out, not just for the remainder of this year, but also the remainder of the season. We wish him well. He has been scheduled for surgery. How will it affect the Foxes? Well, there's a couple of changes that you can potentially look to make. If he goes with a flat back four, then Luke Thomas may be the player that comes in on the left-hand side. If he wants to go with a three, Johnny Evans came through that Carabao Cup tie unscathed. But again, he's been out for around about a month, so whether he can start games in quick succession remains to be seen. We also heard from Steve Cooper, the Nottingham Forrest manager. Great result in the Carabao Cup against Tottenham, who Antonio Conte did put out a really strong side, only made 3 changes for that game. I think Forrest made 9. So it remains to be seen on how he sort of sets up his team and whether anybody on the fringes of that start 11 in the Premier League are going to force their way into contention this weekend. He did highlight the performance of Jesse Lingard being one of those who was suggests that he could be very close. But like I say, they are off the back of a half-decent result at the weekend, that 2-2 draw, I think it was, with Brentford. So, again, I don't expect too many changes. But what we do know in terms of availability, Mangala, he was dismissed, 2 yellow cards. So unfortunately, he'll be serving a 1-match ban. There's also a late fitness check on Scott McKenna and Tigu Kuyate. Both of those players missed out in the Carabao Cup with minor knocks. Now, a decision will be made closer to kick off with that. With Mangala suspended, it could be that maybe O'Brien comes into contention. But as always, we will do a live stream around about 2:15 with Jason McKenna on Friday. Then we'll go through all of the predicted lineups, discuss my thoughts, provide all of the latest injury news and injury updates. So if you have any comments prior to that going live, please pop them in the comments box below and we'll do our best to try and answer those ahead of the game. Elsewhere today, Bournemouth, Gary O'Neill, interim boss, they had a fantastic result on Tuesday night against Everton. That was 4-1. The Cherries were much changed, and again, it's a suggestion that those players who come in are really sort of pushing and vying for a place in that starting 11. What we do know from the Bournemouth camp, they will be forced into at least one change, and that was because Chris Meppen was picked up his 5th yellow card of the campaign last time in game week 15. So that may open the door for Jack Stephens to come in at centre-back. Potentially there's 1 or 2 options in and around that. Again, I'll offer my thoughts tomorrow in a little bit more detail. Now back to the Carabao Cup and see where we are. If you've missed it, Reece James, he's confirmed, and he's not obviously selected in Gareth Southgate's squad, but that hamstring injury hasn't responded as well as hoped, and it was too much of a risk to take him to Qatar. The Blues were also without Jorginho midweek because of a foot problem. However, he should be very close this weekend. For Everton, again, I think Frank Lampard made 11 changes in the Cup. They're on the receiving end of that heavy 4-1 defeat. Wasn't great, but however, the silver line on the cloud, it was the return of Michael Kane and also Yerry Mina, both of those players returning from long-term injury. However, after shipping 4, they won't be putting any pressure on Connor Cody or James Tarkowski anytime soon. With regards to a triple injury update from that game with Leicester, Unana, that was a rolled ankle sprain plus a knock. He's training with the squad now, and also Idrissa Gueye, he had a tightness in his right quadriceps. Hopefully he should train ahead of the game. If they both come through those sessions without any kind of reaction, then they will be in the squad this weekend. However, it looks as though DCL, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, will not be fit. We know that he was forced off for the hamstring issue. He also collided with the post early on in that game against Leicester, and reports suggest that he actually dislocated his shoulder. Now, this isn't the first time that it's happened in recent weeks, and he's actually been booked to see a specialist with regards to that. So his persistent ongoing injury problems continue. Wish him obviously all the best. He's not in contention for the World Cup, so he has at least 6 weeks to recover now. For Tottenham, we heard from Antonio Conte. They went really strong in the Carabao Cup, as I mentioned before, just 3 changes. But he keeps on banging the drum about his players suffering from fatigue, but there's very little rotation in that. And indeed, it was something that he referenced when he replaced Harry Kane. He said even in the build-up to the game, he didn't look great in trainer. He is feeling a lot. However, he did play down any concerns with regards to an injury, as it purely being fatigue related. So again, we expect him to be fine this weekend. One positive from the defeat to Nottingham Forrest was a return of Richarlison. He's coming off the back of that calf problem, so he's in contention this weekend. And also Dejan Kulusevski. That's been a hamstring issue that's been ongoing since the last international break, but he's playing himself in now at the right time. For Liverpool, they come through a penalty shootout victory over Derby County. James Milner wasn't part of that squad due to concussion, but he has been cleared to return this weekend. And also Pep Lijnders didn't rule out the possibility of Naby Keita being involved in the matchday squad. However, I'd suggest that it's only a long shot. He's working his way back from a hamstring problem. He was initially training with the group, suffered a reaction, went back to an individualized program, wasn't fit for midweek. Like I say, has an outside chance for game week 16. In terms of where he's been, he's only been on the bench once this season, game week 2 with Crystal Palace, hasn't played any competitive minutes. And indeed, in terms of what he has contributed to Liverpool since his arrival, around about 26% of all of their Premier League minutes played. So, you know, coming into the final year of his contract, that isn't great. For Manchester City, they come through their tie fairly comfortably, 2-0. Jean Cancelo, he served his suspension in the Carabao Cup following his dismissal against Fulham, so he is fit and available. Calvin Phillips was also introduced from the bench in the Cup. That was good, and he's also been selected in Gareth Southgate's England squad. Kyle Walker has as well, by the way, although we're not sure whether he'll be fit and available for the squad this weekend. And also, still question marks with regard to the fitness of Erling Haaland. Pep said he's still not perfect, that ligament injury in his foot, so he's not 100%. He wasn't involved with the squad midweek, but there hasn't been any kind of reaction or setback with regards to that. It's just a case of managing the player. He could be one that might come into that starting 11 and maybe, you suspect that he wouldn't be ready to maybe complete 90 minutes. For Newcastle, we edged out Crystal Palace. I was there, a ball draw, pretty poor game in all honesty. Went to penalties, and the penalties weren't great either. But a couple of updates with regards to their squad. Callum Wilson, he wasn't involved, and that was purely Eddie Howe protecting the striker against. He has been feeling a little bit under the weather. We heard about that prior to the trip to St. Mary's. He was replaced at half time. That was due to what he referred to as dizziness and lightheadedness. And also Callum said that he didn't feel he had the energy to be able to contribute appropriately to the team. That's why Chris would come in, but I fully expect Callum Wilson to return. Ryan Fraser wasn't part of the matchday squad on Wednesday night. That's due to a calf issue. That's just happened. It needs to be fully assessed to understand the extent of that. However, I wouldn't expect him to threaten a start in that team. Joe Linton returned against Crystal Palace after serving a one-match ban. It remains to be seen whether Eddie Howe chooses to bring the Brazilian straight back, or Jacob Murphy, who didn't play any minutes against Crystal Palace, retains his place in the team. No problems with Kieran Trippier. He had minutes from the bench last night and also scored a penalty. Elsewhere, Leeds United, we heard from Jess March. Joe Gelhardt, or Joffy, as he likes to refer to him, picked up a little bit of an injury, but when discussing that problem, he also mentioned the fact that Patrick Bamford does have a chance of returning this weekend. Of course, he missed out in game week 15 after picking up a hip flexor problem in the last knock-ins of training when he was practicing penalties. And finally, I think for now, Haaland Mitrovic, a lot of questions with regards to his availability this weekend. It looks as if he's going to miss out. Reports from Serbia suggest that the striker is on crutches. Of course, he missed out at the Etihad, and that was because further evaluations and assessments on this foot injury that he initially picked up playing for Serbia. They've identified that he's got a problem and 2 broken bones in that foot. Now, it's not threatening his involvement at the World Cup at this stage, but certainly with regards to an appearance for Fulham before that World Cup break, it looks as if he won't be involved. And actually, one final one, because I've had a few questions with regards to Odsonne Edouard and his availability this weekend. Of course, he was a surprise omission in game week 15 at West Ham. Patrick Vieira said that the striker had trained on the Friday. He was going to work with the squad on the Saturday and they'd make a late decision. However, he hasn't. He's been missing from the match day squad for the last 2 times out, and that's because of a hamstring issue that's still hampering him. I wouldn't say there's been a setback as such, but certainly his availability this weekend is in massive doubt. So big question marks there, and it could be, you would have thought it was maybe Mateta that come in, but actually Patrick Vieira opted to play Wilfried Zaha centrally in that striking role. So if you're one of those that maybe still has a wild card going or is looking to go all out with a bit of a punt this weekend, then maybe Zaha should be on your radar. So that's it for now. Join myself and Jason McKenna at 2:15 on Friday when we're going through the data, the latest team news, and the injury updates, and of course, those predicted lineups. So if you're not subscribed, please do, because once that link goes live, you will be notified immediately. That's all for now, and see you all again very soon.